experts offering clear and insightful explanations on the issues which are shaping the news, which is making headlines. Now, this is where actually we break down the biggest stories with sharpest minds through our conversation with domain experts on the topics which are making headlines even right now. I am Ajay Srivastava of the Indian Express. Now, today's Explained Live revolves around one of the important buzzwords hitting the headlines almost every day. And this is tariff. And when we talk about tariff, we are also talking about its connection to various trade deals. Now, for a moment, let's think that there are certain questions which will always come to your mind when you're thinking about tariff. Like, what is this entire issue? How US tariffs are reshaping global trade. And when we talk about India, what is the gain or loss? What about the other countries like UK, China? Where are these countries in this particular issue? Also, will long-established trade institutions like WTO remain relevant? And what does it mean for India? So, when we talk about tariff and trade, we are basically going to talk about the consequences, the impact, and this is where we'll bring our expert today. Our expert today who is with us is Mr. Ajay Srivastava. Sir is a former Indian Trade Service officer of the 1989 batch. And he was a part of India's WTO and FTA negotiating teams in the past. He head think tank Global Trade Research Initiative or GTRI. So welcome, sir. We're looking forward for the conversation on this important topic. And in conversation with him is Ravi Dutta Mishra. Ravi Dutta Mishra is the principal correspondent with the Indian Express, and Ravi covers policy issues related to trade, commerce, and banking. And with us is the audience, the viewers, very important. And I'm sure that this important topic will have a lot of questions. And for the questions of the audience, the questions from the viewers, we'll take up the questions towards the end. So keep writing to us, keep posting your questions to us. And really exciting. I'm very excited to hear this conversation, to understand the basics and advance of this topic of tariff. And therefore, now over to you, Ravi. Let's begin the conversation with our expert, Mr. Ajay Srivastava.
Hello, everyone. Mr. Srivastava, I would want to start this conversation by telling our audience that you've been part of negotiations for a long time. Not only the deals that are being signed today, EFTA, Australia, but the deals that have been signed under the UPA, Japan, and also RCEP, something that was a complicated deal for India, which we later decided to walk out of. So that is the kind of experience that Mr. Srivastava brings on the table, and he's one of the most sought after expert that we practically talk to every day. And that is why I am very happy to welcome you, sir.
Thanks, Ravi.
So I'll start by asking something very basic. What exactly is a tariff, and why has it become a buzzword? And more than just a buzzword, it has taken a political form. From Donald Trump to Europe to all political leaders, they are actively fearing tariffs, imposing tariffs, and they are talking about tariffs like never before, perhaps. So what according to you, has changed in the last few years?
So Ravi, let's define tariffs first. Tariffs are like taxes which countries put on imports. So we want to protect our domestic industry, and we put some tax on the imports. So we call that import tariffs or tariffs. And there is a body called World Trade Organization. All the countries, they submit a tariff schedule to the WTO, and where they commit that they will not raise the tariff on a particular product beyond what is mentioned there. Now all the countries negotiate, and that schedule becomes final. So the tariffs which are mentioned there, it's very interesting to know. Suppose let's talk about glass. If India is mentioning at the WTO schedule that tariff on the glass as 40%, So we call it bound tariff. This means India in future cannot increase its tariff above 40%. It can reduce the tariff from 40%, but it can never go above. Now the current problem is that almost all the countries, they were following WTO rules. That is, whatever their commitments were there, they were operating within that. Mr. Trump has simply started violating those things. The tariffs he is imposing on the world, they violate three major WTO principles. So first is, the principle says that you agreed, suppose 40% on glass, you cannot raise it. He is raising almost on every product, he is raising the tariffs. So that's violation number one. Second violation is that WTO says a country has to charge same tariff on the glass coming from different countries. He, with the introduction of country-specific tariffs, he is charging different tariffs on glass coming from different tariffs. So he is violating these two fundamental principles of the WTO. So he is in complete violation. Because of him, tariffs, which were part of the trade discourse, have become very political undertone, and we read his tweets almost every day, raising tariffs on a country or a product almost on daily basis. So that has created major disruption in the world trade. And I'll stop here for your question.
Sir, like you mentioned, US is violating a lot of these WTO rules. They are raising tariffs on goods that they have committed in WTO, that they would stick to the bound rates. So I wanted to understand, why is the US behaving in such a rash manner? Because from what we know, history tells us that US has been a flag bearer of free trade ever since World War II happened, and it helped created the system from GATT. Europe depended on US. India is for India. US is the biggest export market. For, I think, a majority of countries, US has been a big export market. So why do you think US has become so aggressive that it has not only blocked the functioning of WTO's dispute settlement system, but also is threatening tariffs on friends and foes?
Two parts to this question, Ravi. First is, after World War II, all the countries, they came together and they thought that the war has disrupted the trade. Let's create a global body where everybody will listen to the global body that will make rules. Everybody will follow. And since the suggestions were coming from the victorious side, that is the US side, everybody fell in line. And then general agreement on trade and tariff was born in 1947. And world trade was just $60 billion in 1947. Today, the world merchandise trade is $25 trillion, 400 times increase. So between 47 and today, merchandise trade has increased 400 times. And in comparison, the global GDP increased only by 26 times. So trade 400 times, GDP only 26 times. That means trade has increased at sharper rate. Why? Because of the US backing. How trade has increased. So three things were there. One, of course, because of technological changes, internet was there, global value chains, they emerged, and logistics and supply chains, containerization, they were the factors. But tariffs, which were negotiated the GATT and later from 1995 at the WTO level, tariff reduction was the major reason why the world trade increased. So tariffs were reduced and US played the primary role in reducing tariff. But now, to come to the question, when US was the prime mover of reduction of tariff or promotion of world trade, without US, this world trade where it is today, it would never been possible. Why this happened? We have to again go into some bit of history. In 1970s, what happened is that suddenly US decided that profit should be the ultimate aim of the corporates. And this somehow gained currency. And politically also it was accepted that it's not the job of the corporates to create jobs or protect environment, as long as they are paying taxes following the legal rules. So the corollary was that you can shift your production to the low-cost countries like China and some other countries. And then because China, you can produce at lower cost, your profit will increase, profit will come down. So that's how major US corporations, they shifted their production to China. So they thought in the end, China will be their backer and all the pollution causing activities will be happening in China. Design and patent and all the profits will be focused in here. So it's great for the US. It will be great for US economy. And then China will be their subordinate ally. So all of these things happened, but China refused to become their subordinate ally. As they grew big, US started getting jittery. They were getting big. US initially thought that they will be focusing on low value add things, but they became big in electronics, computers, AI. Now they are producing their own jets, everything. They are surpassing US even in patent, number of patents filed, number of innovations, number of universities in the top 100. They are surpassing US in every parameter. So this gave jitters to the US and they thought something needs to be done. And of course, they have some grouse, some of which may be genuine, like China is violating the patents, forcing the US firms to share the IPR and all those things. Some of those may be correct also. But then US started withering away from China beginning of 2010. So it made China what it is today. Last week, New York Times story came on Apple, how Apple trained more than 10 lakh workers in China to do everything. So what China is today is primarily mainly because of companies like Apple also. So it was US which made China, but it thought China will be indebted to it. That did not happen. And that's how they are shifting away. And so how to punish China? China makes 30% of the goods and US doesn't make many things. US relies even on cough syrups on China. All the medical equipment, everything they rely on them. All their malls are filled with Chinese goods. So their trade deficit runs about $295 billion. So now Mr. Trump, he says that this trade deficit is because China doesn't accept much of the US goods while US accepts this, and I'll punish China. So he started putting tariffs on China. And then he thought trade deficit is not only with the China, it's with most countries US is having. So he started putting tariffs on most countries. And in this, he violated WTO, all the WTO rules we discussed. So that's the brief background of how he came to this point.
So before we start discussing about where India is in the global trade war, in these disruptions, I wanted to understand how have been trade deals an important part of the global trading system. India is of course a newcomer in these trade deals. If we compare India with Europe, UK, they have far more trade deals. Even with the US, they have far more trade deals than we have. So what is the importance of trade deals and what exactly happens in a trade deal?
Ravi, great. Understanding the answer to this question, it took me many years to realize the real importance of what we are discussing right now. We see every country talking about the free trade agreements as if they are the prime movers of the world trade. So first thing we have to understand is that less than 20% of world trade takes place through preferential route. 80% takes place at the WTO run tariffs. Only 20% is preferential. So FTAs, whatever they have news value, the real trade happens, less than 20% of real trade happens to the preference route, that is the FTA route. That's point number one. I'm saying this because countries like our country, we should be mindful that if you want to increase the exports, you have to focus on the rest 80% also. We cannot invest too much energy on this 20% only. That's point number one. And second is, of course, India has made FTAs as the top tool for promoting its exports. Initially, we thought that we should look east. We had a look east policy, so we did FTAs with our neighbors, SAR countries. Then we moved to ASEAN, Japan, South Korea, later on with Australia. We almost signed an agreement with China through RCEP, but last month we came out. And then almost all the countries of the East were covered. Then we moved west. We signed FTA with Mauritius, with UAE, with Switzerland, Norway. And now we announced completion of negotiations with UK, Soon we may be signing some kind of deal with the US and Europe also. So once all these things are done, we will have FTAs with more than 75 countries, and that will take care of about 75% of our trade. So I'll stop here. Yeah.
Sir, now we should come to the most important, perhaps the most important deal that we are going to sign, and we might be signing the deal in few weeks. I'm talking about US, of course. Sir, you have dealt with US, in fact, in his first term. He was not as aggressive as he is today, but he had imposed tariffs on steel and aluminum, which India had retaliated at that time. So he has always been aggressive. So what do you think, dealing with the second Trump administration, signing a trade deal with US under Trump, what could be the consequences, and where should we be guarding our domestic industry, and where should we, opening up?
Ravi, there are many layers to this answer. When two countries used to sign trade deals like all our earlier deals, so the two countries, they were cutting their tariffs below the MFN level. Whatever I'm charging with other countries, I'll lower that tariff. I'll make it zero, or I'll reduce it. In most part,
if you could explain what is MFN to our
yes. So MFN is a deceptive term. The full form is most favored nation. This simply means, for example, I'll take glass. If India is charging 10% tariff on glass, it should continue charging 10% from glass coming from all countries except from my FTA partners, where I can charge 0 or less than 10% tariff. So MFN is a WTO concept. It says give equal weightage to all the WTO partner countries. So most favored nation, this means you treat everyone as most favored. Give equal treatment to everyone. So 10% tariff on glass, we call it MFN tariff. It will be applicable to everyone, all countries exporting glass to us, except to my FTA partner countries, where WTO gracefully allowed countries to lower the tariffs. So Ravi, is that clear?
Yes, sir. And if you could also add our dynamics with Pakistan, if I remember it correctly, we had given MFN status to Pakistan, and Pakistan never gave it to us, and it was something of a flashpoint between two countries. If you could bring that in.
Great, Ravi, for bringing this. India and Pakistan, I think they are the only two countries where at the time of formation of the GATT, both were allowed to not give MFN compulsorily to each other. So it is mentioned the original text of the GATT, that because of the special circumstances of partition, how the two countries were created, they were given the option. No other country was given the option not to give any other WTO member this MFN. So India and Pakistan, they were given this, but both decided that let's trade, let's improve trade, and in between, we had many wars, 3-4 wars, and the period between two wars was peacetime, and both the countries tried to encourage trade and accorded MFN. So India accorded MFN to Pakistan, say post Kargil, but Pakistan did not accord that MFN tariff. They issued a positive list. Whatever items we need from India, will allow only those items. India accorded MFN that everything from Pakistan can come. But after this last war, we were very disappointed with Pakistan, and we put 200% tariffs on goods from Pakistan. After that, the imports became almost close to zero.
Okay. So, sir, coming back to what exactly trade deals are, and how we put tariffs or increase tariffs or reduce tariffs in with a partner who we choose to sign a FTA with.
Yes, and after that you asked also about India-US trade deal. So, but before this, so when two countries they start negotiating a trade deal, the first thing is deciding on terms of reference of any trade deal. So, for example, when India and European Union, we decided to do a deal. Then Prime Minister of India, Dr. Manmohan Singh, that point of time, 2007, 6, 7, and European Commission Chairman, they signed a joint document which mentioned very specifically these 20 areas will be covered. And this is the ambition. For example, for merchandise trade, it was mentioned that both countries will be eliminating tariffs on up to 90% of the value of the goods. So this gives very clear notion. And that's why I was slightly taken aback because India and US have signed terms of reference, but it's not in the public domain yet. So first thing is deciding the ambition level. For example, with the European Union, we said at the Prime Minister's level that up to 90% tariff will be cut. So similarly, we take negotiation, we take ambition to other subjects also, services, investments, other things. Once this is done, then actual negotiations they start, and both the countries they consult their industry and they find out their items on which tariff should not be cut. They are considered sensitive because, like many of our farm products, we don't want to open them so as not to hurt our farmers. Many of the industrial products we don't want to open, and so we make a list. We consult extensively with the industry. For example, for India EU, Department of Commerce is I think it did more than 100 consultative meetings across the country. Officers were going discussing with it. And based on that, we prepare a comprehensive offer list. So offer list is, I am sharing that Excel sheet with the European Union. It will contain all my tariff lines. Say we have about 12,800 tariff lines. And we say up to 90% will make tariff zero. We'll indicate we'll make tariff zero, say in 2 years time or immediately or 10 years time. So we say we'll make it zero in say 5 years time or 10 years time. And then where we don't make it any cut, negative list or exclusion list, we indicate that also. That's called offer list. So both the sides, they exchange the offer list. Once offer list is exchanged, then I find, oh my God, this is the 10 items of my top priority. Europe is not giving any tariff concessions to us. So we make request on their offer list. They do the same for us. So this goes into many rounds. It may take months or years. And then when finally things are settled, then both the sides, they announce completion of the negotiations, like we did right now for India-UK FTA completion. And then after legal scrubbing, the agreement is signed between ministers or the prime ministers. And then after 2-3 months, it's implemented. That's when the real trade will start getting concessional tariff exports and imports. So that's the the stage-wise thing about FTA.
So with the US, do you think it will be a traditional deal that, for example, we have done a very elaborate deal with the UK. There are a number of goods that are there. There are services, how our people will go and work in a short-term basis. So with the US, do you think we'll have a traditional deal, or there's a chance that a lot of US, a lot of goods for US interests will be opened in India, and we will perhaps only be looking at removal of the reciprocal tariffs?
With US, we cannot call it an FTA. Of course, it will be FTA, but it's like this. Mr. Trump has created a situation. For example, he imposed country-specific tariffs on 57 countries. And for example, India, he imposed 26%. And then he imposed this on so-called Liberation Day on April 2. And then after 1 week on April 9, under pressure from his stock market and bond sales of over $1 trillion, he postponed the tariffs for 3 months. That is up to July 8. And he says, in this 90 days or 3 months time, all you countries, I gave an abeyance, I kept your country-specific tariffs in abeyance for 90 days. In this time, you come to me, make an offer to me. If it pleases me, I'll waive that tariff permanently. And instead of 26%, it will be 10% for India. Others, whatever is the tariff, it will come down to 10%. So 2-3 things are there. So these are not normal trade deals. One is timer is there. Everybody is running to meet that the July 8 timeline, number one. Number two is in any trade deal, both the countries, they eliminate tariffs on most items. Here, when I look at US UK trade deal, US has eliminated tariffs only on steel and aluminium. On the rest 15-20 items, they cut the tariffs to 10% because Congress has not authorized the president. They don't have the fast track authority to cut tariffs. So they are bringing down tariffs to 10%. It used to be 10, it used to be zero. So 10 is the new zero for US. And they expect other countries to cut tariffs to zero. So US cut tariff to zero only for steel, aluminium. For other 15-20 products, it cut tariff to 10%. And in return, UK eliminated tariffs on 2,500 products. See, 2030 of US, 2,500 of UK. And UK was also forced to agree to buy more and more Boeings from US. Other terms, I don't recall, but many such terms. So it was totally one-sided US-centric deal where US is getting everything. So countries are in panic to avoid that July 8 if he imposes those things like Ravi, we just shared a tweet that Trump just now tweeted some minutes back that he will be imposing 50% tariffs on European Union. Imagine the tariffs US is imposing on China is 30%. On Europe, he is imposing 50%. I mean, the world is really an interesting place now.
Exactly. This is something new in the second Trump's administration. He is not differentiating between his allies or China, which is considered to be a challenger in the world trade order. So this is something that has not happened before, and we have seen how dramatic Trump's meetings with a lot of leaders are happening in the White House. I mean, that is one of the signs why these are so challenging times. So I would want to understand one more thing. You know, when Trump came to office, he talked about India, and he always repeatedly he mentioned that India is a high tariff country. India has the highest tariffs in the world, and this is something that has created problems for a lot of US companies, one of them being Harley Davidson and Ford Motors. These are big companies who have footprints across the world, but perhaps not that well in India. So what is the dynamics between this high tariff country and a low tariff country? Why do some countries have high tariffs and why do some countries have low tariffs? And what does it mean for them when they enter into a trade deal?
Great question, Ravi. Let's understand this. So why do countries are allowed? Some countries say US has average tariff of 3% to 4%. India has average tariff of 17%. Why this disparity? How come a developing country like India has higher tariffs than a developed country like US? So as we say, these things were negotiated at the WTO, earlier GATT and then at WTO. So when WTO was constituted on January 1, 1995, before that 3-4 years countries negotiated. And developed countries, they were very confident that world trade, we are the key makers of things. We make all the advanced industrial products, we make all the electronics, everything high-end. China, India, they are into low-end things. So they had great confidence that they want lower tariffs so that goods can flow effortlessly. But they had one more motive. They wanted to include intellectual property right into the WTO. Now it's not a trade-related thing. So they named it a trade-related intellectual property right. Patents and all those copyrights, they are basically a country's domestic law. But they wanted it to be taken to the WTO. Why? For one reason. So that, if any country violates, then they can use the WTO's dispute settlement mechanism to punish that country. So for this reason, because WTO had dispute settlement and WIPO and other bodies dealing with patents, they did not have adequate dispute settlement system. That's why they introduced this TRIPS, trade-related intellectual property rights, into WTO. Another thing, they thought they are great. Internet was just born. They thought they'll be great, number one in digital also. So they wanted services also to be introduced. Before 1995, only goods were, merchandise trade was being dealt in this. They also were giving great subsidies to their farmers. So they also wanted to include agriculture subsidies. So they say, so there was a deal between developing countries like India, China, and others, and US, Europe, Japan on other side. They say, okay, if you accept inclusion of TRIPS, agriculture subsidies, services into the WTO, will allow you to retain slightly higher tariffs. That was the deal. So developing country thought, okay, let's agree to this, and we agreed to that. So every country, as I mentioned the very beginning, every country submitted a schedule of tariffs. So I say on glass, my highest tariff or bound tariff will be 40%. I wrote that for every product and submitted the WTO. So all WTO members did that. And that's how the schedule of commitments were made. So India was allowed to retain higher tariffs, but it was a negotiated settlement. Now US is forgetting that it asks us to include trips, services, and agriculture subsidies. Now they are only saying you have high tariffs, high tariffs. So they are forgetting everything they have built.
So, sir, this is something that in each of our FTAs we deal with a different set of demands. With the US, we are seeing that a lot of traditional sectors like agriculture, there is also a bit of pressure that we should open it up. But sir, for India, we are going to sign a deal with the US. We have already signed a deal with UK and possibly with Europe also in few months. What exactly do we stand to gain in all of these deals?
So there are two parts of any trade deal. The most important part is tariff cuts. Because if India's average tariff says 17%, it comes from 17 to 0, immediate price advantage is there. If the price of this glass is say $10, and duty is 40%, then 10 plus 40%, $14 will become $10 immediately. It's immediate price. So anybody who is doing a deal with India, India is a high tariff country. If tariffs come down, they get immediate price advantage over others. So they get immediate benefit. That's not the case with India. For example, if average tariff in UK is 3% and it comes down from 3 to 0, that tariff wall is so small that it may not be visible. And one more thing is that, about 55% of India's exports to the UK, they today enter UK at 0 MFN tariffs, which means they will not gain from the FTA. These are petroleum products, medicines, low-end engineering products, many other products are there. So only labor-intensive goods like textiles, garments, leather, and such products will gain out of the FTA where UK charges tariffs. So when we are doing an FTA trade deal with a developed country, we are aware that they will gain more because our tariffs are on the higher side. Their tariffs, most of them, they are 0. And whatever is not 0, of course, will come down, but they are again at a lower base. So will not gain much through that. And second thing is that now the difference between our FTAs with Eastern Bloc countries like ASEAN, Japan, and South Korea versus new like UK, UAE, and now US and EU. Here we are talking about many non-trade areas. For example, government procurement. Now India government procurement is the buying done by the central government, defense undertakings, by state governments, by PSUs. It's huge, and some estimates say it exceeds 20% of the GDP, Indian GDP. Some even say 30%, but my sense is about 20%. It's a huge, and India wanted to protect this all along. That's why there was a plurilateral agreement at the WTO. India did not join that. India said we want to retain the flexibility. For example, if we want supply for defense forces, if we see some Indian company is not able to supply that, we open that tender for international competitive bidding. But we have never agreed for opening this sector through any trade deal or at the WTO. But now in UAE, we allowed opening in government procurement for certain sectors. In UK, we expanded those sectors, and we don't have the text right now, but UK government brief says that the government of India has allowed access to more than 40,000 tenders. And so this all these for UK companies now will be competing with Indian large and small firms. So we are doing that, and there is no reciprocal benefit to us. They are already part of the WTO, and studies show that our participation in their government procurement tenders is minimal. They are so complicated, and our firms are not geared up to gain from them. So it's one-sided concession. So we have to see that in tariffs we cannot match them. Even a US that the UK government brief says that India will be losing more in terms of revenue than the UK, and their exports will be growing at a faster pace. That's their government is study, and I agree with that. So trade and non-trade areas both, I think trade deals with developed countries, they will not benefit India.
Sir, you have focused on the goods section. Is there a benefit for India in the services side? Because all these developed countries, the dominant sector is services, insurance, banking, and IT. So if we are signing a trade deal with them, and if the movement of professionals, if that is increasing, so will that benefit us in terms of integration with those economies, in terms of growing these sectors better? Is there where the much of the benefit lies?
Yeah, great question again, Ravi. Thanks for this question. So let's understand how the services trade happens. So India always says that because of this tariff, we are high tariff country, so we don't stand to gain much on the merchandise trade side, but we'll gain much on the services side. That was the stand we have taken in many FTAs. But let's understand how services are traded. So services are traded in 4 ways. So WTO calls them modes, 4 modes of services delivery. So first is we supply services through the internet. So we call it cross-border trade, mode 1. And so most of our services, IT exports, they are done through offshoring, through internet. They fall into this. And most of the trade happens through US and of course UK. And without any trade deal, it's doing fine. Mode 2 is suppose a patient comes to your country for medical treatment. That's what is mode 2. It's very small. And mode 3, if my company goes to other country and set up shop there, invest there, FDI and all those things are there. So we don't have many companies who are setting shops in other countries. So our primary interest, as you rightly said, is in mode 4, where our professionals move. For example, TCS or Infosys get a project in UK or US, and their engineers, they are needed on site to perform certain tasks. So they'll be there for 6 months time, 9 months time. They need special visas. These are not immigration visas. They are there on purpose for 3 months, 6 months time, short-term visas for professionals. So these are covered under mode 4. So we ask for such visas in all the FTA negotiations. But immigration is a big issue in UK also. Legal text is not out, but I don't see UK committing any numbers for professionals. Of course, they say 1,800 visas for yoga teachers, music professionals, but that's not the business thing. For IT professionals, where we should have been pressing, I don't see any commitment on the numbers, and I don't blame UK for this, because immigration is a very sensitive issue for all countries now, and I think Brexit happened primarily because of on immigration point. So mode 4 is our primary interest, and most countries, they are not willing to accommodate our demand on mode 4. So we don't get much on services also.
So these trade deals earlier, as a reporter, I would see the Commerce Ministry being involved, but after COVID, after Russia-Ukraine war, after these massive geopolitical realignment, MEA is taking a lot of interest, and perhaps it was always taking a lot of interest, but that engagement has increased. The cooperation between ministries have increased. The PMO is actively pushing a lot of deals. So, and in 2019, we decided that RCEP is not what we want, and we turn to Western countries. So do you think this this decision of kind of pivoting away from Chinese trade order is going to benefit us? I ask this because a lot of ASEAN nations, they are benefiting from the technical know-hows that Chinese have achieved. Even the tiny countries like Bangladesh, the movement of Chinese professionals in Bangladesh, the to and fro is easier than in India, and they have benefited. The textile industry in Bangladesh has benefited from those things, and we are seeing that in Southeast Asia also, Chinese have increased their presence, and they are the manufacturing hub to date. So, is that pivot in geopolitical terms? Is that pivot a beneficial one?
Two, three things are there. One, we had wars with China, and post Galwan relations politically were not good, but trade was never affected. Both the sides, they have not done anything to affect trade. Of course, Indian government issued one circular that investment from China will go under some scrutiny, but we never stopped trade, we never stopped investments, and because of that, you see our trade deficit with them is continuously increasing. It's almost $99 billion right now from them. So I say, see, if we talk about, say, latest India-Pakistan war, China clearly sided with Pakistan, very clearly siding with Pakistan. So, and we need Chinese goods. We need their machinery, we need their chemicals, we need their APIs. So for me, the best thing under the current situation, where politically they are siding with our enemies, and we need their goods. So let this relationship be transactional. For example, whatever we need from them, we buy from them. And that's what is the current relationship. And I think government is very much reconciled to this. That's why they never, despite all the political tension, they never imposed any restrictions on imports from China. Otherwise, we would have cut the imports from China through some ways. But we need those things. Till India develops its own strength, we need those things. But I think beyond this, more integration with the Chinese economy, unless we have some sort of friendship, some understanding at a deeper level, then I don't think it will be good in the long run.
So before I take questions from our audience, my one final question. All these trade deals, like you mentioned, is only 10 to 20% of the global trade. And we know that China never signed so many deals. It was because of its competitiveness and inherent strength. So do you believe that along with focusing on these FTAs, there's a very sharp internal policy reforms that is required for us to become a manufacturing center, and only then we'll be able to benefit from these trade deals?
Yeah, I can't agree with you more, Ravi. We should start looking inwards. We have many things to do, many specific things to do. And I say there are many things on which there is no opposition of any kind, political or economic. But only thing is that we have to start doing those things. So we have high cost of inputs. We don't have uninterrupted power in many places. Our land prices are very high for industry, and capital cost is very high. For example, even a small country like Sri Lanka, more than 25% of their MSMEs, they have access to the loans, collateral-free loans. In our case, the figure is less than 4%. So we have to work a lot. Then we have to look at our QCO. We have to look at how much time we take in exporting and importing. We have to benchmark that with the global things, global ports, best working ports. A lot of work is there which is cut out for us, and I think we should next 3, 4, 5 years we should focus on this ease of doing business, cutting cost of inputs, and these two things are there. And then the third and most important thing that I feel is we always miss it. We have to do a lot of reverse engineering. We did reverse engineering with great success in pharmaceuticals. But we need to do that in machinery, in other chemicals, and many things where high technology is not a problem. But we need to do those things. Why at this stage of development we need to import nail cutters, knives, nuts and bolts from many countries? Why? Why? There is no technology problem. So we need to do those things at a deeper level.
So the first question of one of our viewers, Kumaraswamy Viru Prakashan, is the world order collapsing? Would you say that?
So I would have responded differently, but just 1 hour back, after looking at Trump's tweet that he is imposing 50% tariffs on Europe, and I remembered that he imposed 30% tariff on China. So more tariff on Europe, less on China. That means world order is collapsing.
Okay. So, Manas, if you want to go ahead, or should I?
It's about to say that there's so many questions.
Yeah.
Ajay sir and Ravi, while you were having this conversation, the viewers are sending questions. Now, one question which is coming again and again, and I would like to take up, is that Trump asked Apple CEO to stop building iPhones in India. So the viewers are asking that what it will mean for Apple and what specifically it will mean for the Indians who want to buy Apple iPhones. This is on repeated demand, this question.
Manas, I would love to answer this. So, if let's understand this, let's talk about an iPhone of price, say $1,000. And so out of that $1,000, Apple gets $500 straight. Other American companies get about $80. So $580 goes to US pocket right now. And India, high-end iPhone, we import everything. Everything means everything. And we get less than $30. So out of $1,000 consumer is paying, India gets $30. China also gets $30. So 85% of iPhones are being assembled in China, 15% in India. So now what happens if this is shifted to assembly is shifted to from India to US? So I say Tim Cook should listen to Mr. Trump and shift the assembly not only from India, because it's only 15%, from India and China both. It will create 3 lakh jobs, low-end assemblers job in US. Of course, US wages will be 20-30 times higher than Indian or Chinese wages. So Apple's profit will come down drastically out of that. They will be from $500, it will be reduced to less than $100 per piece. But of course, the money will stay in US only. Apple's pocket will not get it, but US will get it. US will get 300,000 jobs. So I say Tim Cook should listen to Mr. Trump and shift job assembly not only from India. Trump only asked for India. I said shift also from China so that you generate more jobs in US. And now what will happen to India? See, as I say, we get $30 only for $1,000 iPhone. And this $30, most of it we give back to Apple, Foxconn and others as PLI incentives. So net to net, country's pocket may not be getting anything. And all the jobs we are getting, those jobs are very low and low paying jobs. So we don't lose much. And one more added advantage, we exported smartphones worth $7 billion to US last year. That $7 billion on my head as trade deficit, that will go down. So I'll be very happy if we shift it there.
It's interesting. We have to wait and watch.
Yeah.
Rahul KP has a question. If I can ask Rahul to, unmute. Okay.
Hi. Thank you, both of you, for this interesting conversation. I was also looking at the questions. They were really great. My question is slightly away from just the direct implications of tariffs and trade deals that are getting shifted, but it is the ripple effects of tariff and trade policy shifts, which is undermining a global ambition like climate action, wherein countries like India are looking at aggressive measures, especially from an industry point of view, where MSMEs and private players are at a position where they need to be really upfront in taking climate action seriously and decarbonization efforts, especially in industries like steel, cement, ammonia, etc. And we also have a trade barrier set up by European Union, which will be coming to effect pretty soon, maybe as early as 2026. So unless we act immediately, we will be paying the price also in economic terms, wherein our exports of steel would actually get affected. So I want to, there are two parts to my question. One is, what are the immediate implications to India's climate actions, especially on the decarbonization front, when there is an uncertainty in the tariff and trade deals globally, and especially when retaliatory measures are also very much in action? That is the first part. The second question is, what can we actually do, maybe World Trade Organization or in global climate leadership? How can these forums influence global leaders or administrations to find certainty or stability and protect global ambitions which are larger than these transactions, which might be just economic in nature, but their effects are also far higher and larger in extent. And if global ambitions in such areas gets weakened, that might slow down and affect human lives as well. That's it. Thanks.
So, Rahul, my quick response to the first part is that, European Union, it imposed carbon border adjustment measure, and taxes will be starting from January next year. And UK also will be starting after 1 year. So suppose I am Tata Steel in India. Now what do I do? Rest of the world doesn't have any such measures. So what's the incentive for me? Do I need to have 2 production lines in my factory? One for making green steel, which will be good for Europe, and another for rest of the world? Steel will remain the same, only the process will be different. So unless all countries have agreement on a common measure, this is not going to succeed. European Union, again, alone they are going alone. It's not going to succeed. And if you read what is happening inside the European Union, a lot of resistance is there. Their exporters are saying our business will be shut down, give us subsidies, all those things. So these measures have to have global understanding, global agreement. That is not there. So they are not going to succeed, whatever we say. It's sad, but that's where the position is. Ravi, I missed the second part of the question.
So I think he was wanting to understand what role WTO will be playing in the future, and what exactly is the situation with.
On this climate change, I read 2 days back, Russia filed a plea with the WTO. That citing problems with the European CBAM. So WTO will be passing some orders, but again that order, no appeal can be made because there is no appellate panel. But it will be interesting to watch what happens, because Russian paper is very competent and there is some fundamental issues. So again, whatever happens may not be to your liking. European Union doesn't have their own separate sky. We all share same sky, and that's why any measure taken by them, UNCTAD report says, will not bring down the global temperature by even 0.1%. So it has to be global understanding. That is not there, so nothing will happen, unfortunately.
So, but I think CBAM, whatever happens with CBAM, the law part of it, it will be the first time when a country brings such a law, and it will test WTO's decision making, their stance, and it will truly be the first time when environment affects trade and how countries perceive it. I think that is
sure. Yes, Ravi.
Sir, next question is from Anil Suthar. If I can request him to unmute and ask his question. Anil Suthar, are you around?
I think he's not in the list right now. But his question was related to the global change, how India can deal with tariffs and improve its trade deficit. This is a very direct question, but a very interesting one, it seems like. How can India deal with tariffs and improve its trade deficit?
So once we have never done a comprehensive review of our tariff. In every budget, we raise tariffs or we cut tariffs on some item, but it's the time to look at all the tariff lines, 12,800 tariff lines comprehensively. And when I did a simple exercise, I found that more than 90% of the revenue comes from less than 5% of the tariff lines. So and last 60% of tariff lines, they contribute less than 3% of the revenue. So why the tariffs are there on those lines? So if we need a comprehensive review of the tariff, all the tariff lines, so that we can answer these questions. And once we do that, we can also sort out some problems like inverted duty structures where tariffs are high on the high on the raw materials and low on the finished goods. That discourages manufacturing in the country. So it's the time India should undertake comprehensive review of its tariff structure in toto. It has not been done in the past 25 years. It's the time we do it.
So, but
there are many. Yeah, please continue.
So, but aren't there multiple reasons to impose tariffs? Number one, like you said, it was a revenue measure, but it also serves as a protection for some industries. I mean, the revenue might be low, but if we remove that protection, the imports will surge in years.
Ravi, the interesting thing is that on 70% of tariff lines, our tariff ranges between 7.5 to 10% only. It is not a 100% to 100. It's not a wall to protect the industry. So the 91 type of tariff to 100% tariff, they are no more there. They are there only for few items like cars, like alcohol and all those things. So all I say is that, and then I mentioned that last bottom 60%, they give only 3% tariff. If no imports are coming onto that means there is no need in India for those things, and there is no hurt to the industry. And second, we do it, it's our own thing. If any problem is there, we can always raise it because our WTO commitments they remain the same. So I say there is a need to have a look at everything once again. We have done so many FTAs, so many issues are there.
So there's one question which is coming from a lot of viewers, be it Vijay Mathur, Sunil Gupta, and others. Though you have thrown some light on it, but the question is around the real relevance of WTO in today's situation. How relevant it is? Will it remain relevant? And how India's commitment towards various things related to WTO, how is it now going to play a role?
I'll give you my guess. So first, some facts. Despite whatever Mr. Trump is doing, more than 80% of the world trade still follows WTO tariffs. All the trade is happening, those things. Whatever is not working in WTO is the dispute settlement. But all other rules like MFN tariffs, national treatment, the basic principles of WTO, all the countries are following those except the US. And US under Trump is not following. Mr. Trump will be a history in 3-4 years' time. We'll be looking at his period with great interest and amusement after some time. That there was a person called Trump. He turned everything upside down. And I think US will revert. The US is the maker of the World Trade Rule. It's a confident nation. And I think it will revert to pre-Trump policies. It will junk all his policies. And I think countries also. Today, UK is signing this one-sided deal. Do you think UK will not have resistance, or India tomorrow signs such deal? Do you think India will not have resistance? If countries sign under duress, they will throw that deal the moment Trump goes, or much before that. So I say WTO rules are still relevant. All countries are following. Trade is using those rules. So Trump is not following many of those rules. And as soon as Trump goes, or much before that, I think things will come back towards WTO. WTO has done great things for the trade, and it will come back to its prime position very soon.
Thank you, sir. And if I may ask that, what about? So there is a question which is an interesting question. I'm not sure if. What are these chronic issues? Is India not able to negotiate with the global north when it comes to trade deals, or is it a valid question to ask here?
No, of course, we should address every question. So why it is being said, we from 90s, we followed a conscious policy of look east policy. And that was the region where most of the FTAs were happening. It was the most competitive region: Northeast Asia, East Asia, Japan, China, South Korea, and ASEAN, of course, at the central level. So we did FTA with all these nations, and we gained also from all these trade deals. And once we completed that, we started with the western side. But these countries, I negotiated with both the sides. And my personal thing is that while the East Asian countries, for example, ASEAN or Japan, South Korea, they are very business-like. You give me something, I'll give you something. But many countries like I don't know how should I say it. For example, European Union. I'm talking about some time back, only not the current situation. They are inflexible in their approach. If they don't want to relax a thing, they will not relax. You relax 10 things, but in return, they will not recognize that. They will not relax that. I hope that situation must have changed because both the sides have agreed to expedite the deal. But I thought this developed country side, they were slightly more inflexible. Some attitude of superiority still persists, the colonial attitude in some of them, not all of them. But there are again smart countries like Switzerland. They are very business-like, but not the European Union. That's what is my personal experience. I cannot generalize that experience, but I felt that.
So there's one interesting question from Ketan Kalsaria. What are the major reasons behind India's slower global trade growth compared to China, despite having huge potential? Sir, I remember you had written a column saying that there was a time when we had a trade surplus with China. I think it was in 2005. And
Yes.
it will come as a surprise to a lot of people, even experts, that there was a time when we had a trade surplus, and in just 20 years, 25 years, things have dramatically changed. At the moment, we have a trade deficit of around 113 billion from China. So why is it so?
So Ravi, it amazes me. In late 80s, we were exporting more computer hardware than China was exporting. We were exporting more APIs and formulations than China was ever making. We were very good in many of these computer printers and all these digital things. We were neck to neck on textiles and garments, and then our liberalization happened, and many good things happened in India. But we were talking about liberalizing things, liberalizing rules, but we never focused on building things in that moment. China used that period, 90s, for building amazing scale, sector by sector. They started with textiles and garments. They moved to low-end machinery. They moved to electronics. And then companies, American companies, they were behind their back, always helping them. Like Apple, I say, it trained more than 10 lakh Chinese workers, engineers to make China what it is today. So with America was with China, and that's how China grew. Of course, they used very foresightful policies. For me, I think we are talking about making India increasing share of manufacturing in India's GDP, but we have not focused at a deep product level. Otherwise, we would not have been importing knives and nail cutters and nuts and bolts today from many countries. So China has applied itself, and I can see it. I'll give you one anecdote about that about the garment industry. Earlier, even the high fashion garments, they were made only in Europe and later on in Japan. So Europe, when they thought now no more, let's decentralize it. So they started a quota system that China can supply 5 million pieces to them, India can supply 2 million pieces to them. So some middlemen used to be there, and they were getting orders from European Union and distributing to Indian firms to supply those things. And middlemen used to have contract with each of the Indian firm. If you don't supply on time, not on quality, then we'll sue you on this. So they had the same system in China. So this contract system worked very well in China. If some firm was failing to supply on time or quality, the courts were deciding in the favor of this middleman agents. In India, courts were grossly inefficient, and middlemen, they went to court, they never got any justice from the courts, and they disappeared. And people say, many studies are there, they say that was the decline of India's global standing in garments. That's how China gained, India lost. We have 100 such reasons. Each has to be addressed. Those reasons are known, but we never go at the deeper level. We talk, for example, we say we have to make this glass in 1 year's time. 1 year it cannot be made. How can it be made that I import the raw material straight and then convert into glass or assembly type of things? I import all the components and assemble into a radio or a TV. So only assembly can be done in 1 year time. So we need to invest time, and we need to identify people. We don't need bureaucrats on these things. We need real people who have done work on the field, and we have millions of them. Believe me, not lakhs, but millions of competent people, and they are available at no cost. We need to identify, give tasks to them, and get going.
Manas, before you close, Sir Abhijit Das is with us. I think he is listening to us live. He has pasted the the relevant provision of GATT between India and Pakistan. It is there in the chat. He had pasted it at around 6:22 p.m. Viewers can have a look at it. And I must inform you that Abhijit sir is one of the best negotiators in India and one of the best experts on international trade. So you should definitely look at that.
He's the best. He's the best.
That's really interesting to know, and I'm sure I'm sure all our viewers will be interested, because the list of the questions which we had throughout the conversation is long, and I must say that there are a variety of questions, but because of lack of time, I think I apologize. I take the blame. I will not be able to take all the questions today. But what an insightful conversation, Ravi and Ajay sir, and especially the questions you've addressed from basics to advanced, and your anecdotes and your experiences, which substantiate so many points there, which will be very useful for our viewers. Those who would have not joined us live can go to the YouTube channel of the Indian Express and watch this video once again. And also follow the reports and the articles by Ravi, who is going to cover, I'm sure, this in more detail, as this topic seems like it will go on, carry on. We'll have more issues to discuss on. I must specially thank Ajay sir because he's taken out time for us, and so lucid way of explaining such topics which can bounce heads of so many people. But thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, viewers. Thank you, viewers, for joining us. We will be back with Explained Live, in coming times, with more issues which need explanation from experts from the Indian Express. We'll be here. Thank you. Till then. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.